Sherlock Holmes, The Awakened. Now, this game came out originally in 2007, and it was the third in its franchise. However, I wasn't necessarily looking at the time for this title because, I had a computer that couldn't handle it, even if I had found out about it. When I did find out about it, it was after my wife had gotten me the fourth game in the franchise, my late wife, and I discover a Cthulhu statuette in the game. So that got me interested. In fact, when I finally did get my first copy of it, it was part of a 3-pack for the first 3 games. And it was remastered to use elements that were in the 4th game. Now, this game was it had a very good story, which was a blend of course, Sherlock Holmes and Lovecraftian lore. And it was actually the first of their games that allowed you some free control, I think, of Sherlock Holmes. And sometimes you played as Dr. John Watson, which was in the previous title of the series. So what's the basic story of it? Well, Sherlock Holmes ends up getting involved with a mystery involving missing people of pretty much every nation under the sun. And his investigations in London lead him to an asylum in Switzerland. Later, events would take him to New Orleans, which I believe is even mentioned in Lovecraft's Call of Cthulhu as being where one of the, quote, cult's activities is located, before ending up at a lighthouse in Scotland. Now, as Sherlock works his way through, we have a mix of action sections as well as some puzzles of somewhat complex thought. And we also see that Sherlock takes the basically takes a pure skeptic approach, while not fully believing in it, acknowledging that the symbols and the lore has power or plays a part in it. And that makes it even more intriguing. Discovering cultists all over, how deep this thing goes. But this game also cements where it and the rest of the games happen in canonical Sherlock Holmes lore. See, the Jack the Ripper one is still a little tough to place in canonical lore. And the upcoming release, Chapter 1, happens even before that, during Sherlock Holmes' youth. However, The Awakened places itself after, I believe it was called The Final Solution, or The Final Problem. And if you are not aware of that story, it is very famous or infamous because it is the one in which Sherlock Holmes and James Moriarty apparently plunged to their death at Reichenbach Falls. Now, of course, it's discovered. That was actually intended to be the last Sherlock Holmes story, but it's discovered. Conan Arthur, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle wrote more, revealing Sherlock Holmes had survived the whole incident at Reichenbach Falls. This game states that there was a second survivor. In fact, you will find Moriarty in the asylum. And in an effort to indirectly, well, unintentionally or indirectly, I think it's more unintentionally, Moriarty ends up helping Holmes escape the asylum as Holmes frees him and convinces him that the person at the top of the stairs is Holmes himself. Now, of course, after this and before they head to New Orleans, we have a brief encounter with the very young Hercule Poirot. And it's those little nods that you have to enjoy in a game like this. Now, of course, they go to New Orleans, have to use their wits, and you see how Holmes treats people equally. I mean, well, you do see people who are considered lesser due to the society they were in. Holmes treats them equally. I mean, they're apparently looking the other way when somebody does something to, you know, get rid of a potential nosy detective. And they even try and send a message by killing another person. But in turn, Holmes is able to figure things out. Seems, I guess, the people in the, not all the people around are in cahoots with this cult. By the time you get down to the rest of the game, I mean, when you're in the final section, it's a matter of figuring out how to get in, taking moments to stop things, and you find out all these kidnapped people were subjected to unnecessary brain surgery, so they would repeat the same phrase as the ritual would basically be, you are telling the story, or the ritual was a person of every nation must pledge that nation, doesn't matter how high up they are in its system, to Cthulhu. It is ironic that a very large wave comes up to the lighthouse that they are at. You never see, the only depictions of Cthulhu you see in the game are in statuettes and statues. And even at the end of the game, it's like there's multiple ones around 221B Baker Street, hidden in little nooks, not intentionally put there, it seems. Now, there's another thing about this story. this adventure, is that it gets told in media res, which is a very brilliant thing to do with anything, quote, Lovecraftian, in my opinion. Because it opens with Watson having a nightmare. Nightmares that will bother him for some time after this, I believe. While it's not apparent in the game that comes next chronologically, it does still show up in Nemesis. But as I said, he's having a dream and it then tells you 2 weeks earlier or something like that. I can't remember if it was 2 weeks or 2 months right now. So that was another brilliant thing. And Holmes himself looks at it through the way of the skeptic. Does he believe these things exist? Not necessarily. Does he believe that the people are doing it has merit in what they're doing and what they believe? No, he does not. Well, he believes they believe it. And in the nature of, if this is something seriously bad like end of the world or anything like that, do you want it to happen? No. So even if you don't believe it, you treat it as it's completely credible. That's Holmes' viewpoint. And even the ending of the game pays nods to the standard in what I think is of Lovecraftian lore and Lovecraftian stories. The ending is at best oblique, and answers the question, did you really stop it? Or asks the question, did you really stop it? And in Holmes' mind, he believes he stopped it, but in the course, he's unleashed another evil on the world, one he is certain of, and which is James Moriarty, whom he thought was dead. And yes, that will come back in later installments of the series. Overall, it's a very good story, and it's a very great game. It has a nice blend of thinking puzzles and action sequences, given, of course, the era. And I do recommend this one. You can find it on Steam, you can find it on GOG. It's a great game. I would recommend it. And you could probably get it at a very good price right now. And that's all I have to say about Sherlock Holmes The Awakened. Take care. Like the video if you've listened to it to the end. I hope you've listened to it to the end. Again, this is Rich Kale here on YouTube, Rich Gen X elsewhere. And please subscribe to the channel. Check out some of the other stuff I have up there. Bye.